due to the provision of a swimming pool and internal plant, the development would be considered compliant with policy CL7 and would represent a single-storey basement in line with that policy. So you can see here the section showing the kind of section through the smaller part of the basement. And then this is a longer section, and you can see clearly where the pool is here and the balance tank associated with that, and then the plant within the roof structure of the basement. And this is a plan of the basement. You can see the pool on the right-hand side and then the associated uses with that. And then the coloured plans on the right-hand side of the slide are useful to understand in relation to policy CL7 that the basement wouldn't cover more than 50% of the existing garden area. And this is a slide to demonstrate how the temporary works are going to take place. So a draft CTMP has been considered by our highways officer, and part of that is the removal of this part of the wall to be disassembled, to be then used as part of the construction works on a temporary basis, and then reassembled once those construction works have taken place. And the highways officer has considered that the draft CTMP is acceptable in principle, but a condition is attached and recommended by officers to ensure the submission of a final CTMP is submitted prior to the development commencing. And officers consider that the development is in keeping with the character and appearance of the conservation area and would not result in unacceptable impacts to trees, drainage, or have unacceptable construction impacts. The officer's recommendation is to approve this application. Thank you, Chair. Oh, yeah, sorry. I draw members' attention to the addendum report that was also submitted as part of this committee case.
Good, thank you very much indeed. Now we have speakers for this case. So if I can ask the objectors to go first. Councillor Rossi, thank you for joining us, and also Mr. Lass. Now, it's really up to you as to how you would like to do this. Who would like to speak first? You've got up to 5 minutes in total between you. So, who would you like to do it? Okay, very good, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the third time I've been to a planning committee to object to a basement proposal in Seymour Walk, and the residents of that street have had to put up with a great deal of disturbance from basements as well as damage to their properties. As a council, we determined that basements would only be allowed if they were 1 story deep. That is just one basement, not 2 and not 1.5. Policy CL7 specifies this as 3 to 4 metres in depth. But this basement proposed at number 5 Seymour Walk is excessively large. I argue that it is more than one basement and is not supported by our policy. The depth is such that it could easily be called a 2-story basement. The basement is bigger than the house above it. I draw your attention to our letter from the 3 councillors, our letter of objection, in which we calculate that the excavation would be 7.7 metres altogether. This is surely contrary to our own policy, and for the sake of fairness and logic, we must define what we mean by a 1-story basement and not allow the parameters to be elastic. And we should question why an additional allowance is given for a swimming pool. At the time of adopting the policy, I don't remember that there was this specific dispensation for swimming pools, and certainly I did not vote in favour of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Our Residents' Association, as Councillor Rossi said, has been blighted by basement developments for the last 10 years. Frankly, we see a 7-metre deep excavation as a Trojan horse to create a double basement, and when the applicant says the pool is no longer viable, you'll simply roll over and grant retrospective consent because of the financial risk of losing at appeal. The fact remains that CL7 is not fit for purpose. It ignores the wider impacts of development in the borough, and that as an authority you have neither the resources nor the political will to challenge wealthy, largely non-resident house owners. In a nutshell, whether policy compliant or not, the scale of development is totally inappropriate for a constrained site that is entirely surrounded by other residential properties in a very narrow cul-de-sac. To put this in context, the draft CTMP reflects the removal of over 4,000 cubic metres of spoil involving nearly 1,500 heavy vehicle movements over a 2-year programme. Why should the residents and the struggling businesses on the Fulham Road have to put up with this degree of extended disruption, bearing in mind all the other developments currently underway or consented? Your officers can't or don't see this to be an issue. The vehicles that are proposed to be deployed for the removal of 7,000 tonnes of spoil are totally inappropriate and are more akin to a major construction project. They will cause continual disruption and represent a serious safety hazard at the junction of Seymour Walk and Fulham Road, where a new cycle lane has been created in less than 100 metres from a large busy hospital. These concerns were referred to the applicant's design team back in September and by subsequent emails. However, they have been totally ignored. The original CNT has simply been resubmitted and the applicant has ticked the consultation box. As far as they're concerned, it's job done. Our association considers that enough development has been tolerated in Seymour Walk, where applicants simply view the CTMP as a tick box exercise. We cannot therefore entertain a development of this scale on the same basis, particularly where the applicant has treated the consultation process with such utter contempt. We would therefore ask that in the interests of public safety and the well-being of residents, that the application is deferred until the applicant revises the draft CTMP to take account of our various serious concerns, and that this pre-agreed plan is referred back to your committee before the application is determined. We believe that this is within your powers where matters of residents' well-being, public safety and the risk to life is concerned. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Now, we've also representatives of the applicant or maybe their agent present. So in similar fashion, between you, you've got up to 5 minutes. So please go ahead when you're ready.
Thanks, Chair. Good evening, members. I will speak first. In particular, I will talk about the draft CTMP and also the basement depth. The architect is here. Is there some whistling going on? Is that? Yeah. Apologies. I'm wearing some hearing aids, so I had a lot of whistling. So, members, I'll talk about the draft CTMP and the process that was undertaken in connection with that, and also about the basement depth. There was a consultation with neighbours in Seymour Walk by letter before the submission of the application, and a copy of the draft CTMP was also emailed to the Residents' Association using the address provided on the Council's website. No comments were received, but we became aware during the application that the email address used for the Residents' Association was incorrect. The draft CTMP submitted follows the Council's pro forma template fully. It is very much a draft, as is normally the case at this stage. It will be revised and fine-tuned once contractors are appointed. The CTMP does propose servicing from within the confines of the site, so as to seek to have no impact on residents' parking bays and limit disruption within the streets for traffic. The final version will require the input of a contractor, and there is always a fine balance in finding the appropriate vehicles to use relative to the site and street, with the aim of trying to reduce the number of trips and keeping the build time as short as possible, so as to try to limit the time of disruption for residents. During the application, when we became aware that the Residents' Association had not received a copy of the draft CTMP, a meeting was held with them to discuss its content as well as further email correspondence. It is agreed that a revised CTMP will be provided, but this should be once a contractor is in place and a contractor is not yet appointed. However, once a contractor is appointed, the applicant is committed to engaging and consulting with the Residents' Association and others in order to prepare the final version of the CTMP. This ordinarily would be submitted for approval as part of a pre-commencement condition, so before any works can start, if planning permission is granted. The Residents' Association would be able to comment on the final version when it is submitted, so I would reiterate that the applicant will continue to consult with them and neighbours in its preparation. No works can start until the final CTMP is approved, and then its approval will require it to be followed fully. Following the meeting with the Residents' Association, the applicant's team has confirmed the measurements of the road widths outside number 5, nearby parking bays, pavement widths on both sides of the road, the width of the bend in Seymour Walk, and undertaken further swept path analysis. There are a range of vehicle sizes that can access the sites, and it is possible that these would vary at different stages in the build. The draft CTMP envisages that construction and delivery vehicles will be on site, and this will continue to be the case in the final version. This can be achieved by removing part of the front wall and using part of the front of the site as a compound. The ability to have all of this taking place on site is relatively rare, but it is possible here due to the size of the plot and will help to reduce on-street impacts. The proposed drawings were amended in September during the application to reduce the depth of the basement. We were not asked to provide an updated version of the CTMP because the final version is usually dealt with by condition, and the Highways team review of the draft one submitted with the application found it to be well considered and an acceptable methodology, as set out in the committee report. The amendment to the basement has reduced its depth by 1.2 metres. The floor-to-ceiling height is 3.95 metres, and an allowance is made above the ceiling for plant, ventilation and structure. Only in the pool area does the basement floor drop down further. Policy does acknowledge that this can happen. Everywhere above the basement there is provision of 1 metre of soil depth in compliance with policy and to allow for surface water drainage. The proposals therefore comply with all of the criteria of policy CL7.
Actually, thank you very much indeed. Time is more or less up, but there might be questions that you can help with. So, colleagues, questions to either the objectors or the applicant. Who'd like to go first? Lloyd, Councillor North.
Thank you, Chair. I've got two questions to both sides, actually. The first question is about the consultation. We heard just there that there was consultation by letter. It's always good practice to consult with neighbours. I noticed that 6 properties were notified by the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea. Other than the letter, could I ask the applicants what other consultation? Were there any discussions with the resident association, individual residents, local councillors, anything like that? And I'll ask the same question to the objectors after.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So it's set out in our pro forma, the consultation that took place. So there were 2 rounds of consultation. So for residents living in Seymour Walk, a letter was sent to each resident. We did that twice before the submission as the CTMP was evolving. In order to contact the Residents' Association, that was done by email. The author of the CTMP used the email address that was available on the council's website. So we did send that email. We're aware that it was never received because the email address was incorrect. When that came to light in the planning application, we then arranged to have a meeting with the Residents' Association because we were aware that they hadn't seen CTMP or the draft CTMP beforehand.
And could I just ask the objectors, is that your understanding of the consultation?
I don't believe that all the residents in the street were provided with a letter. I certainly wasn't. I live at 37 Seymour Walk. I track all the applications on a weekly basis, so I was aware of the application. I've been trying to get our email changed with the council for the last year, unsuccessfully. Fact remains, we did have some consultation, and frankly, it was totally ignored.
And just one follow-up question to the applicants. Can you confirm the time of the total job, that's the deconstruction, excavation, build, the total time that the residents are going to have to put up with this excavation and build?
For the basement dig, we're still waiting for tenders to come back, but we suspect it's going to be in the region of a year, probably a year and 2 months, something like that. Those are the sort of indications for the basement dig. There is also some refurbishments planned for the house above it as well, which is a subsequent application, which we're still detailing. So that's the sort of region. And could I just answer on the CTMP discussion we had? I believe there was concern about the size of the vehicle, which we then measured and...
I'm sorry, that's not part of my question.
Okay, fine, that's fine.
Just to follow up on the time frame, so you're saying 14 months total build. Is the other refurbishment expected to be concurrent with this, or would that be in addition to and after? Obviously, that's subject to any planning application that's made.
Yes, it would be concurrent, but
Thank you.
There might be some other elements of work, but that's the basement dig.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to ask, similar to the consultation, I'm thinking about here, and I've been reading the 15, more than 15 comments that we have, objections. Just how long did it take you, and this question is to the applicant, how long did it take you to find out that the email that you sent about the consultation was not being received? Was it before you sent the application in or after?
It came up during the application. So the emails had been sent twice before submission. And then when the application was actually submitted in May, but it took some time to be validated. So the consultation exercise didn't really start until July, August. And then as comments were received, it's at that point it became apparent that the email address that had been used was incorrect. So we then we brought that to the officer's attention, and we then arranged to have a meeting with the Residents Association. So that took place in September.
Can I just add to that timescale? Because even though it's submitted in May following a pre-app as well, which was October 22, the officers and conservation officer also changed. So we had feedback in September, October from the officers, where we then amended the basement and revised it. So it's resubmitted and then reconsultated after that date. So in October, it went out to consultation following the meeting with the residents, just for clarity.
Okay, so from what I'm gathering here, you've acted on and you've consulted back again once you've secured a channel of communication with the residents. In the future or moving forward with this application, you've said there will be an opportunity to consult and again to continue. If we were to grant this application, do you think it will be, in a way, pointless to really, or the residents' view, that you will not take measures forward because you've already got the grant, the application being granted from us? Or what would be the way forward for you to deal with the residents and make sure that the area is the conservation and everyone else is taken on board, rather than just the needs of the applicant?
It's currently set as a condition of the application that it has to be consulted again, and it's a discharge of condition for that very reason, because the specifics of the contractor need to be involved. And I just want to reiterate, on the many basements we've been involved in, it's quite rare to have a situation where you do not have a skip, a conveyor belt for a basement, and all of the site access and the disturbance is contained within the site, which we see as a benefit. I think what we need to consult is really about the size of the vehicle and have that debate with the residents once we know what the contractor is proposing, and that would be handled by the condition.
Chair, one final question to the, thank you. And now is to the objector. I wish to know what is the main objection that you have? Is it the size of the basement? Is it the pollution, the vehicles that will be taken, or the deep, we've talked about the 7.5 deep basement. What is it exactly, and is there a way forward for residents to work with applicants and to measure, and so that we, if we were to grant, can get conditions attached to it?
It's just the sheer physical scale of this development. In a street that's 2.3 metres wide, it's got a bend and it discharges straight onto the Fulham Road at probably one of its narrowest points. So, as we always say to basement applicants, if you want to dig it out with a teaspoon and take it away in a bucket, we don't have an objection, but it might take you 5 years. The contractors always want to do it in the shortest possible time with the largest vehicle. The vehicles that they've suggested is 4-axle tipper truck, similar to the ones that are being used in the Harley Gardens at the moment, causing complete chaos there. How they expect them to actually get into Seymour Walk when there are people parked on the double yellow lines, which happens most of the time, and then get out of the Fulham Road when it's completely solid and not disturb the residents' activities or the access for an ambulance or the bin lorries or deliveries that happen 400 times a day, I really don't know.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Any other questions? No. Okay, so thank you very much indeed. So colleagues, our chance to ask officers questions. Actually, I'll go first. I assume that the CTMP, I mean Seymour Walk, Mr. Lax is absolutely right. Over the past 10 years, there have been numerous applications for development, including some quite large basements in Seymour Walk. And I think the suggestion by the councillors that the CTMP come back to committee, I think that I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'd be amazed if my colleagues didn't agree that that was something that should happen. My question, though, is about the depth of the basement, and to try and understand, because some of the sections that the writing it's quite difficult to read. The 7.7 metres, is that from the ground? So in other words, it takes in the 1 metre of topsoil that we require. Yes, is that correct? I understood that correctly.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, you have understood that correctly. So the section that you're referring to has multiple measurements on, including the measurement from the ground level to the top of the basement ceiling, as you were. So that includes the kind of topsoil and the plant that's to be included. And then we have 3.95 metres ceiling to floor depth of the basement area. And then we have an additional 1.2 metres, I believe, for the pool. So it is considered to comply on those grounds with the subtext of policy CL7.
And I think it's a perfectly reasonable point to raise as to whether, the basement policy should be written so to allow additional space for swimming pools. But the fact is, it was written in that way. So having the extra depth, because it's a swimming pool, is part of the policy, I think, isn't it? So that's simply that's the way the policy is written. Yes, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So there's subtext which informs the policy, and that does give the description of what a single-storey basement development is, and that's where it does allow for the additional depth for the swimming pool.
Thank you. Colleagues, anyway, Sam and then Will.
This is just a question to officers. Maybe they could read out the policy. I don't have it in front of me, just so we can understand it. But is it usually that the depth of the basement should be X, and it can be X plus something when it involves a swimming pool? I just wanted to see whether it was the 4 metres and the 5.6 metres that this application is asking for. We want to make sure that this is in line with policy. It is much bigger than the height of any of the other floors in the building.
I do have the policy in front of me, so if you would like me to read that part out, I can, yeah. So a single story is one that cannot be subdivided in future to create additional floors. It is generally about 3 to 4 metres floor to ceiling height, but a small extra allowance for proposals with a swimming pool may be permitted.
Thank you. So our question really is whether 1.6 metres is a small extra allowance, because that's the extra. Or looking at the section that I've got, that's the extra for the swimming pool on top of the 3 to 4 metres, which is indicated in the policy.
Yes, that would be correct. I think it's 1.2 metres from the plans that I've got in front of me, rather than 1.6 for the swimming pool. And then there is also a bit of extra headroom for the plant, which is considered to be a benefit because it's actually subsumed within the basement development rather than outside in the garden. So it will reduce any kind of noise emissions from the pool associated plant.
Can we just check that? Because I'm looking at the proposed sections C, C and BB in the pack, and that's saying 1.6, little red arrow pointing from on the pooly bit, the watery bit.
Yeah, so to clarify, so I think it's 1.2 for the actual swimming pool depth without taking into account the floor build-ups or the kind of foundation-y bit. So it's 1.6 if it includes the depth of the floor, if I'm reading that correctly, which I believe I am.
Thank you, Chairman. Leading on from Councillor McIver's question, 2 questions. First of all, would I be right in assuming if, say, an applicant wanted a diving pool or a plunge pool or something that was much deeper, say 9 or 10 metres, that would not be permitted under the SPD? Is that correct? Under the policy, sorry, CL7.
Yeah, so it doesn't actually give a specific depth for a pool, so it would be on a case-by-case basis, but it does say a small allowance, extra allowance, so I think it's an interpretation of policy. And
then just a follow-up question in relation to the plant. You say it's a net benefit because it's not included outside, but why can't plant be included on the ground floor anywhere in the existing building? And would there be any limit to the extra depth required by plant? Let's say it was you've required 1 or 2 metres for the plant. Would that be permitted? Just trying to test how far it can go.
So I would say we're assessing the proposal in front of us, and they've not made any recommendations to where plant may go. We're kind of assessing the plant as proposed in these plans. So I don't think it's for members or officers to kind of decide if that plant
If I could just follow up briefly though, you said previously it was a net benefit because it wasn't situated outside.
Yeah.
But I'm saying why can't it be situated in the existing building, not within the basement? If it could be, then why is it a net benefit for it to be contained within the proposed basement? It's just what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, so I'm not sure as to if there's other places within the property it could go, but the plans in front of us have the plant kind of tucked away within the ceiling voids of the basement, and that means that it's not going to be within the garden areas of the property, so the noise that's emitted from that isn't going to be audible outside of the property. So officers have said that that is a benefit in the sense that it's going to reduce amenity impacts rather than maybe it being in other areas of the property inside.
Thank you.
Sam, last one.
Yes. Just seeing if this is in policy, if you look at 6.5 in the officer report, it says the general floor to ceiling height would be 4.9 metres, because it's talking about the overall basement being 6.7. So general floor to ceiling would be 4.9. And in 6.4 above, the policy you just read out, it says the policy specifies that a single story represents 3 to 4 metres in depth. So it looks like the 4.9 would be over the 4 metres in depth included in the policy. And then we talked about the small extra allowance of swimming pool. 6.5 is saying, paragraph 6.5 is saying 1.6 metres. So we have to decide whether 1.6 is a small extra allowance. But my big question, if the paragraph 6.5 is accurate, we seem to be allowing, seem to be recommended to grant a general floor to ceiling height of 4.9, which is outside of the specific policy, which says should be 3 to 4 metres.
Yeah, so then it says, however, in taking account of the provision of the ceiling plant, so that's where the officers made a small account for the additional space in their headroom area of the basement, just to allow that plant to be contained within the basement area.
I mean, just to make point, the way in which the policy was written, as people may remember back then, was exactly what the residents have been saying tonight, was to try and provide useful accommodation for residents, but to limit the environmental and personal impact of the amount of excavation that was required, and that's where those numbers actually came from. So the amount being dug out and created of a basement is itself sort of the policy limitation, and if it's being dug out and replaced by plant, then I don't think this actually I don't think this actually would be able to be converted into 2 stories, because looking at the actual numbers, but it's not far off. But this is, it feels like it's right at the edge of what would be allowed in policy.
I think that would be correct. Yes, it is at that point of the policy where it is pushing at the boundaries of it, and I think that's why the officer has gone into a bit of depth about the size of the plot, the plant, etc. These things which may fall into that kind of category of additional material considerations when you're making a decision on the basement policy in this instance.
Okay, Lloyd, last question.
Yes, it may be presumptuous of me, but I'm anticipating what the chair is going to suggest. My main concern over this is, in addition to my colleagues, and the residents have made a quite compelling case for this, there's a lot of people living in this mews, and the CTMP needs further discussion, so I'm anticipating what the chair is going to suggest. I have concerns over the CTMP, but I won't go any further, Chair.
Okay, Councillor North, thank you very much indeed for that. Yeah, I think you probably correctly anticipated what I was going to say. So I think if there are no more questions, then I think we need to make a decision about this. Yes, I think the points that Councillor Markover has made, I think are quite right. And I think in practical terms, this would be quite difficult to be subdivided into 2 stories, although the dimensions kind of push up towards the limits of it. I think definitely the CTMP needs to come back. As has been said, Seymour Walk it's a very narrow road, although this is a curious site because it is large and you can actually take vehicles off the highway, which is unusual in a narrow street. So what do colleagues think? How are we minded on this? Who'd like to go first?
Thank you, Chairman. I think based on the comments of my colleague, Councillor Mackover, I'm still struggling to understand the numbers and how this is compliant with the quoted 3 to 4 metre in depth limit. I do understand the small dispensation is allowed for swimming pool under policy CL7, but the total depth of 6.7 metres versus the 3 to 4 metres contained within the policy, that seems like a fairly large disparity, at least to me.
Personally, I would be, I'm generally in favour of things which are within policy, but this does seem to cause me a bit of difficulty on the overall depth. I think it's right, whatever happens, it's right that the CTMP would come back because it's a very sensitive case, and this is scraping right up against the policy, and maybe I'm not convinced that it isn't over the policy in terms of absolute depth and this add back for plant, but maybe it is right at the edge, and maybe the policy itself needs to be clarified going forward.
Thank you, Chair. I do share with statements from colleagues, and I think we, as a council and as councillors here making the decisions, want to support the residents, whether it's in objection or in develop or to make life better for their families. But at the same time, we have to follow what the policy says. And on that note, I think it will be unfair to reject this one as it is, but also unfair to give the green light. So my overall thinking is to perhaps assist it to come back and maybe further consultation with the residents as well as with the applicant, and hopefully come back to make the right decision. Again, because of the policy, what we have here and the numbers that have been talked about, 7.7 deep, and then again 3.9, and the last one, which obviously we talked about, 1.2, and now in the document it says 1.6. So I think it will be just fair to get everything in order first, and then to come back to the decision making. But that's my view on this. Thank you.
I think I should just maybe clarify. So the decision that we're making, I'm going to propose in a moment or two that the CTMP does come back to committee for determination. So that would mean that the details would have to be worked up and there would have to be consultation with neighbours. But that would not include reconsideration of, for example, the various depths of the proposal, which we've discussed at some length. So I think it's important to separate those two out in the decision making. Councillor North, any thoughts, or shall I just move to a vote? Okay. Well, in that case, what I'd like to do is I'd like to put the recommendation as set out in the report to the vote, but with the proviso that the CTMP would come back to this committee for approval. So can I, on that basis, can I see those in favour of the application, please? Can I see those against? Okay, so the application is refused. Now, I think that it sounds to me, and I'm looking officer colleagues here, it sounds to me that the members are unconvinced that the depth in the drawings that are in front of us are compliant with policy CL7. I think, colleagues, do I understand that correctly? That's what you think? So I think, is that something that we can, I think it seems a fairly straightforward reason why the recommendation is not agreed.
Yeah, so from listening to your debate and questions, I think that it would be straightforward in the sense that it would be not in compliance with policy CL7, our basement policy, and it would represent a deeper basement than that is referred to within the single story definition in the policy subtext.
So the correct way of doing this is that there needs to be a proposer for that as a resolution to refuse permission on those grounds. Can I see somebody to propose that, please? Councillor Lane, is that seconded? Councillor Mackover is prepared to second. So I need to put that resolution to the vote. Can I see those in favour of that resolution for the reasons for refusal? Can I see those in favour? Okay, so that resolution is carried unanimously. Thank you. Very good. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Okay, if we can now turn to the North Pack, please, and the application at for the pub in Goulburn Road, please. So, just when you're ready, you're going to introduce that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This application relates to the public house at 10 Goulburn Road, and the application seeks permission for the variation of condition 10, which relates to hours of operation in relation to earlier consent to align the opening hours with the new premises licence that's been granted. So, in detail, permission is sought for the temporary extension of the opening hours so that the venue would be open from 7:30 a.m. to 1 a.m. the next day, Monday to Wednesday, 7:30 a.m. to 2 a.m. Thursdays, and 7:30 a.m. to 3 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays, and Sundays to remain as consented, which is 7:30 a.m. to midnight. We've been in consultation with our environmental health colleagues who have confirmed there have been no complaints over the past 12 months since the varied hours were brought into use. And although they've raised some concerns regarding extending the hours by the 1 hour on the Monday, Wednesdays and Fridays and Saturdays, officers are recommending that we only grant this on a temporary basis for a year to ensure that it isn't going to result in detrimental activity to the amenity of neighbours. And we have included a condition 11 which restricts this to 1 year, whereby the times will revert back to those allowed under the original 2015 consent. And that's it. There's a site photo and a plan which shows the detached public house on the corner of Goulburn Gardens and Goulburn Road on the screen in front of you. And the officer's recommendation is to grant the temporary consent. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So we have speakers for this. So can I ask the objectors, please? Are you present? Good evening. Hi. So when you're ready, please, you have up to 3 minutes between you if you wish to go ahead.
Good evening. Actually, I have a few concerns. I've been a resident in the flat next to the actual place since 6 years. I've been there for, as I said, 6 years, and I have never been notified of any changes that's happening with that place. So they moved it from 12 midnight to 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. We were not notified. Every single weekend, we are out in our balconies shouting to the people, keep partying outside. We are suffering. We have kids. We work. We don't have Monday to Friday. I personally work weekends. So if I don't sleep, I cannot wake up and I cannot work. My kids cannot sleep. We are suffering sleeping deprivation. We are in the middle of a council estate. I don't understand how he got an authorization to open a private club at the beginning. And I would like to know how things are done without the residents who are next door are not notified at all. If I didn't make this request, I wouldn't be here. My neighbor who's here, if I didn't tell her, she wouldn't be in here. She didn't receive any letters. So I don't understand how come we are not told anything and we are the ones suffering. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's a little time left if you'd like to add.
Hiya. When the lady was talking, you said that no complaints have been made, but my understanding that complaints have been made. I've made direct complaints to the owner of the building. I've got those text messages on my phone to prove I've made complaints directly to him regarding the noise. He knows, and I've texted in messages to him, I cannot use my bedroom Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Impossible. You cannot sleep in my bedroom. Yeah, my bedroom window is literally right on his doorstep. I am his closest neighbour. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I sleep in my sitting room. That's all I want to add. But I know you have a lot of letters that have been sent in from other residences as well. So hopefully they're considered also.
Yes, very good. Thank you. Now, I think the applicant is represented as well. Yes. So please, in similar fashion, you've got up to 3 minutes when you're ready as well.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, councillors. I think first and foremost, whilst I obviously hear the comments from our neighbours, I'd like to point out that we also had 28 letters of support from local residents. So there is an element of support from the community towards our business and its impact on the local economy, jobs and culture. Through our artistic residency programme, we've really been promoting culture as a whole. We have always strived to try and communicate with the local residents. I've shared my mobile number and said that I would always do my best to try and address their concerns, listen to their comments and implement whatever operational measures I could do to improve their lives and allow the business to keep running. We've been open for 6+ years. A lot of our staff have been here from day dot, so they're familiar with the intricacies of running a business in an area like that. And we really do try our best through a really rigorous dispersal policy that we follow. Every time we've got some pretty serious SIA accredited security to come and manage the premises, which is a big cost, but one that is warranted due to again the location. Before we applied for our license 6 or 7 years ago, there were 43 objections towards us getting our license till 2 a.m. When we applied to extend our license till 3 a.m., there was only 1 objection, which I think is a testament to how we've worked hard to run the business well over the last 6 years. Lastly, I would just say that hospitality is struggling at the moment, and what Leylo brings to the area is important. This extra hour does have a big impact on the willingness of people to come across London to our venue, or for local community to come and spend their whole night in our venue rather than skipping off somewhere else. So this is a pretty important thing for us, and to allow us to keep the 50-odd jobs that we've got and keep the business running in what is definitely very troublesome economic times for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, colleagues, questions? Who'd like to go first? Will.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a question to the objectors. So we heard from the applicant there. I just wondered whether you would like to respond to the assertions made, I think principally on the 28 letters of support, perhaps, and also in relation to the lack of complaints. Would you like to respond to that?
I'd be very interested to know where the 28 residences of support actually live, whether they're actually front facing on the square, where the noise kind of bounces off of all of the buildings, where the front of the building where people exit coming out. Those 28 letters of support that he has, I'd be very interested to know where the actual residents live. In regards to complaints, you've made complaints to the...
I made complaints.
To the environmental?
Yeah, I made complaints before and to the environment and health, and I always go out and shout. And it's not just me, all the neighbors, we meet outside and shout at the people because they are...
It's disgusting.
Jumping on cars, throwing up, waiting for cabs while they are dancing and singing. It's already 2 o'clock. Do you want to extend it to 3 o'clock for what? And it doesn't bring anything to the local community. It's a private club. It's just the private people. It's not for us. It's for his own benefit, for his own staff. I don't understand he does have 50 people that they are waiting for a job or working, but we have as well kids and we are living there, and we as well we need to have consideration as people living there. It's not possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask one question? I don't know how this really works, to be honest
No,
with
I'm sorry. I'm afraid you can't ask questions.
Because Lalo's been sold and it's moving.
No, I'm sorry. That's,
Okay.
you're not able to engage. I know it sounds a bit harsh, but we can ask questions, but you aren't able to. And equally, you can't cross-examine the applicant, and he can't ask you questions. Colleagues, Sam, Councillor Mack.
Thank you. Hearing what the objectors are saying, question to the applicant, do you recognise that what we're being told and what we see in the objection letters, that your customers, your clientele, whatever they're called, patrons, are causing this disturbance, or do you contend that your customers are silent when they leave and they don't cause any disturbance?
I can't control all my customers, and naturally in an establishment when people drink, there will be some level of noise. That's why we've spent a lot of time working with environmental health, with the licensing, the committee, with our security company, as well as the experience of the managers that we have, to work on a dispersal policy that mitigates that as much as possible. We implemented and discussed this at length with licensing a policy whereby we use the restaurant as a basically holding area before letting people back on the streets to grab their taxis. We obviously, and just to pick up on a point that was made, it's not a completely private club. It is, part of it are open to the public, but we do keep track of all of our members who are noisier than they should be, and we have revoked several memberships as a result of the level of noise that they have made. And I'd be lying if I was saying we were perfect, but we do strive really hard to try and mitigate as much noise as possible. And we always review whenever there is an incident. It's not only reported as per the licensing obligation, but internally we review what we could have done better, what we need to do to improve. And if these specific guests are to come back, we've cancelled several events on the notion that we knew that there might be too much noise to the detriment of our revenue. So, I do understand where they're coming from, but, we do try really hard to mitigate the noise as much as possible.
I hear you, but I am reaching the conclusion from what you're saying that you currently, with all the security and all the other provisions with holding areas, etc., you can't control your customers sufficiently, and therefore there doesn't seem to be something in this which is going to make it better or stop it from becoming worse, because there will simply be more hours even later that the customers will have longer to become high in spirits, or whatever the phrase would be.
Actually, and sorry, this kind of falls into the kind of operational methodology of a business like that. Having an extra hour allows for people to basically disperse on over a longer period, which allows us to manage it better, in the sense that having that extra hour means that some people will stick around longer rather than more people trying to leave the premises around 2 o'clock. And just to pick up on your point, I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm surrounded by people who've got in the region of 10 to 15 years experience. We manage our customers very well. We don't serve them too much alcohol when they're inebriated. We have control over who comes into our walls, and we monitor it very carefully. We do our absolute best to, again, mitigate, the potential nuisances that can happen outside. And, historically, I think the venue's had a pretty rock and roll past since we've been open, which justifies the 43 objections to our initial license application in 2014. When we added an hour to that license last year, there was only one objection, which clearly shows that we're doing something better than was previously done, and in fact fairly good, in the sense that we went from 43 objections down to 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions, one to the objector and one to the applicant. On the application form 6.11, Environmental health team has been consulted before about the application and the noise, relevant noise. And there was actually application which is kind of a similar proposal that was refused planning permission for similar concerns that the residents we have here now mentioned. My question to you is, if goes back to similar what Councillor Merkova, Councillor Sam has pointed, if you were not able to control your customers, but then again you're asking for 1 more hour to, will that give control, or will that actually make things worse than it was before in terms of resident, assuming that you just yourself, as you were residents who can hear or cannot sleep, or the next day have a work to do, or and just add to one relevant environmental issue. A good professor of mine at University College London once said to me, that was unrelated but very much environmental issue, that a good night's sleep is good for the environment. So I would like to know what you personally think, how you think that adding 1 more hour to already an issue where the residents, nearest residents have an issue, can help you to calm the situation.
Thank you, Councillor. And I do obviously respect the importance of a good night's sleep. As I mentioned earlier, one of the several reasons why we've applied for a later license is to basically kind of smooth out the way egress is done out of the premises in the later hours. The people that will stick around a bit longer, there'll be less people in the venue by the time they decide to leave, and that's definitely one of the major reasons why we've done this. Again, coming back to the point of controlling our customers, within the reasons of what can and can't be done, we do control our customers actively. Like I said earlier on, the staff that's been with us has been with us a very long time, so we know a lot of these people on first name basis. We've revoked several memberships for people who were too noisy. We've got the same detail of security in place for the better part of 3 years now. Again, they know the ins and outs of the area, of how to manage noise, how to manage customers, how to manage cars, etc. And we are constantly, every week we have a managers meeting where we review the weekend just passed and what we could have done better and how we can improve. We take all of these things very seriously, and I respect the neighbours' comments, but there has to be a kind of commonality here where this business is allowed to survive and allowed to have patrons up until a certain time, all the whilst making it work with the local community, and we do absolutely strive to make that happen.
Thank you. A question to residents. As you've mentioned already, you're having issues with sleep, the profession, and you also have residents in the local area. In fact, I understand it's a communal area, it's the housing estate, but one thing in surrounding areas, including Trellick Tower and the rest of it, I would like to know what is the problem for just adding 1 hour to what you already are going through. What will be the problem for you and in terms of your children and the local community? Can you specifically tell us?
Okay, so I wasn't even aware the first time round of the licence timings changing. So a lot of these things that go on, the residents, we aren't made aware that these applications have been put forward. So it was only by chance this time that I was made aware, because apparently there was something put on the telephone box. The telephone box outside the flats. There's nothing that comes out to us. We don't receive no emails, no letters, anything saying regarding the applications. So, and the way we live at the moment, as I said, I don't use my bedroom. My bedroom is front facing. I'm literally outside his front door. So I don't use my bedroom on a Thursday, Friday and Saturday. I sleep in the sitting room, which number one is unfair, because I'm sure, as all of you, as you've said, sleep is the number one priority. And I've texted Johnny, and he knows. I've texted it to him. He has it in text message.
The 1 hour is going to make a big difference for us. If they leave at 3, it means they are going to stay outside until 4:30. By that time, we didn't have at all a sleep. The following day, we have to go to work. An hour and a half at 4 o'clock, it's a big, major problem. It's already a problem as it is. So between 2 and 3:30, we are already struggling. So if we are sleeping, we have to wake up. We don't sleep at all. And now we have to extend it until 4:30. It's a big, major decision that we are not really willing to take at the moment because, for example, as she said, my daughter sleep at that bedroom next to the street. And literally, when they come out from the club, they are literally under my window, screaming, shouting, dancing.
I think we,
It's too much.
we understand what you're
Thank
saying.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I no further comments on this one. Thank you. For
good.
office. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Oh, Lloyd, right.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. I'm just looking toward the question to the applicant. I'm sure you recognise that a lot of the people that have put in support for this are not local people. They're not even living in the borough. So are you still saying that the 28 people that are supporting your application are based on local people?
Some are, some aren't. And, you know, we could have had a lot more from the local community, but we felt that 28 was a pretty decent show of force. Ultimately, you know, we went through the difficult hurdle that was licensing, and we had from, you know, Keith Mahaffey himself, who's a pretty hard chap to please, on good authority that we are respectable operators. And I think this is what it really boils down to, is that whilst I am, you know, it pains me to hear what I'm hearing at the moment, but we do take these things very seriously, and we do try to be as respectful as we can towards the community. We made it absolutely crystal clear from the beginning that I was happy to share my mobile number to absolutely every single resident, and if they ever had an issue, they could contact me and I would respond. And I think Wendy has pointed that out, but she has messaged me and I have responded, and, you know, we will carry on doing this. Granting this planning application will not just mean that we won't care about what happens. You know, if anything, the temporary 1 year allows us to prove to you and to the local residents how much we do take this seriously. And, you know, it's considering that we've already gone over this with license and licensing has granted it. If there really was an issue, then license can take away our license. And, you know, that's how it works. I hope that you guys understand that we obviously, you know, it's not pleasant to hear these things, but we do really take this seriously, and we do try our best and review our policies and our procedures regularly to try and improve and get this right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Okay, thank you everyone. So colleagues, questions to officers. Who'd like to go first? Councillor Lane.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I ask officers to comment upon paragraph 6.12 in the pack, the statements from the environmental health team, where they do say they've experienced previously how noise from the premises can impinge upon the amenity of neighbouring residents, and they state themselves they have considerable concerns if the application were to be granted on a personal basis. I'm just curious how RBKC's own environmental health team can say that, and yet it's recommended for approval.
Yeah, many thanks. So in regard to paragraph 6.12 that you've just drawn my attention to, we did consult with environmental health, and they did come back with these concerns that you've highlighted, which is why in consultation with them, we've decided that in this instance, a 1 year period to kind of almost as a trial to ascertain if this would work in practice has been recommended. And that is also, as the applicant has said, to align with the licensing decision, which was also granted for the additional hour. So the two regimes will control it concurrently if this were to be approved.
There isn't a technical reason, is there, that we are forced to go along with what licensing has decided?
I don't believe there is. No, they're two separate regimes. So planning is separate to licensing, so you don't have to make a decision to align with the license that has been granted. No.
Is that good? Sorry. Just a quick question on consultation. We've heard the objectors say that they didn't feel that they were... I've noticed that we only notified 2 properties in the nearby area of something as important as this. I did note that there were 28 in support, including the local ward councillor, for this case. Is this normal that we'd only let 2 properties know? I know the building quite well, and there's lots of flats nearby, and this is quite a high dominant one, so their balconies and windows are going to be overlooking this. I'm just surprised that only 2 people were noticed, or 2 properties.
Yeah, thank you for that. So our community engagement strategy is that we notify those with adjoining boundaries by letter, and for those that don't have an adjoining boundary, we display site notices, which is considered to fulfil our statutory obligations in terms of consultations for applications. So that's what would have happened in this instance.
Okay, thank you. Well, we need to make a decision. Unusual set of circumstances, I suggest. What colleagues, what do you make of this? Who'd like to go first?
I'll just give a comment, which would be the application would be stronger if the control was very good over the patrons who are dispersing at the moment. And it's very hard for me to see that we're not still on the same page as the reasons given for the refusal listed in 4.6, and also in 6.15, where the environmental health team have objected to a permanent planning permission being granted to this application. If environmental health are against a permanent grant of it, I don't really see how everyone's going to benefit enormously from a 1-year trial where the existing situation is unsatisfactory for so many residents.
Thank you, Chair. I feel the same. Sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Elliott, you go first, and then Councillor Lake.
Apologies, Councillor. I thought you were looking. Thank you, Chair. I think as it stands, with a view of residents and environmental noise, I think it's important to give the residents that assurance that they can have a decent night of sleep, since it's a residential area. And I understand the applicant mentioned 28 supporters and beyond. But what's important is that very much people who cannot sleep, and they cannot sleep in their bedrooms. And we know the housing crisis of the council. So if they cannot move, they're stuck with it. So I think that's the way forward.
Thank you, Chairman. I do certainly take on board what the applicants say about the importance of nightlife in London. It's difficult to completely control patrons leaving when they've had a drink. However, I am drawn to what Environmental Health have said in this report. I think they've been quite strong in saying that even under the current hours, there are difficulties in terms of noise and the amenity value to neighbouring residents, both in the paragraphs that Councillor Makov has identified, 6.12, 6.15. So I'm just unconvinced how extending the hours further would solve the pre-existing problems. I do, again, take on board what the applicants say about more time for patrons to leave, but I'm unconvinced by that.
Okay, well, I think I've got a fairly good idea of where we might be going on this. So what I'm going to do is, I think I'll simply put this to the vote. So the recommendation is to grant. Obviously, there's the condition that it's only for a year. Can I see those in favour of the recommendation, please? Can I see those against? Okay, and I'm abstaining. So the recommendation is not adopted. Now, in terms of a reason for refusal, I think the refusal reason that was from just last year, I think, based on amenity of neighbouring properties. I would assume that that must be the basis of the reason for refusal. Yes?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that sounds reasonable to use that same or similar wording to that already refused scheme.
Okay. Would someone like to propose that, please? Councillor Lane. And would someone like to second Councillor Ali? Okay. Can I put that resolution to the vote? Can I see those in favour of that resolution to refuse for that reason? So that is agreed. Okay, thank you. Okay. If we can now move on to the application for advertising consent, which is Foxton's Notting Hill Gate. So when you're ready, please go ahead on that.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, before you is the advertisement consent application at 90 Notting Hill Gate, and members' attention is drawn to the addendum report submitted in support of this case. Sorry. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, just Councillor Gardner, if you just, yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, so please go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is an aerial view of the site. So it sits at the corner plot of Notting Hill Gate and Pembridge Road. So the site is currently in use as an estate agent known as Foxton's, and currently has signage to one elevation and 2 projecting signs. So on the left-hand side is the existing, and on the right is the proposed. So the proposal is for the display of 3 fascia signs and 2 projecting signs, all to be illuminated. As you can see here, this is the proposed Pembridge Road elevation and the existing, and this is a useful slide to demonstrate the projecting signs which are to be installed on the 2 corners of the existing property, and the internal illumination that these will feature. And then the proposed fascia signs are built up letters with a timber fascia, aluminium lettering on a kind of built up illuminated backing to them, set on a timber fascia. So recommendation is to allow consent, or to grant advertisement consent, and a condition has been included to restrict the brightness of the advertisements to 75 candela to ensure they are not overly bright within the street scene. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Now, Councillor Gardner, Janet, you've registered to speak against this. So please, whenever you're ready, you've got up to 3 minutes. Janet.
I speak as ward councillor and on behalf of the Ladbroke and Pembridge associations. We object to the sheer size and number of the illuminated signs and the increase in branding of the shop front across all 3 panels. Both of these are contrary to the council's shopfront SPD, and it's on a very key visual site, which is Gateway to Portobello. The officer's report says in paragraph 610 that concerns have been raised in relation to the adopted shopfront design guide. This SPD aims to ensure that all shop fronts contribute positively to the identity and quality of the built heritage and streetscapes. And the criteria for projecting signs are that they should be no more than 1 projecting sign per shopfront, and the maximum size should generally be 600 to 400 millimetres, but a smaller sign may be required. Paragraph 611 of the report says 2 projecting signs are proposed with a measurement of 600 times 900 millimetres. That is twice the permitted size of our SPD and would fail to comply with the criteria. The shopfront SPD also says that in cases, illumination should be treated as an integrated part of the overall design of the shopfront and not merely a means of highlighting an advertisement. Foxton's signs are illuminated, they're just too big and they're excessive. They list every means of contacting them too. In addition, Foxtons are proposing to brandish their name across all three panels of the shopfront, contrary also to the Council's shopfront SPD, which states the size of lettering should be determined by the need to be reasonably legible to shoppers, but not to be too large to swamp the fascia or the shopfront. My question to the committee is how does an increase from 1 fascia panel to 3 with large Foxton graphics on each not swamp the shopfront or negatively impact the identity and quality of the streetscape? I've sent in my pack some photographs of another advert that they've just put up, and frankly, this would mean 6 Foxtons logos in total outside Foxtons. I don't know of any other shop on Notting Hill Gate or in my ward that has 6 advertising logos. I ask you please to refuse this application. It's too big, it's too excessive, and it's on a very key site. We as residents feel that this is just excessive, and actually it needs to be in tone with the area, not just Foxton's branding of Notting Hill Gate, full stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I think Chris Warren, is that right? Mr. Warren, are you here?
Yeah.
All right. So you're representing the applicant. So please, in similar fashion, you've got up to 3 minutes when you're ready.
Okay. Yeah, so basically the background of this was the existing approved scheme of advertising, which is, first of all, the projecting signs, which are 900 by 600, which are existing and approved, and we're not proposing to change the number or the size. We're basically putting them in the same application. The main change is for the fascia lettering. The existing has an approved Pelmet external lighting, which washes the whole of the fascia, and this is in need of replacing. So the client wants to, instead of actually replacing like for like, is to basically introduce a more subtle halo effect lighting with opaque lettering and a halo light, but also to introduce lettering on the 2 other facets either side. The reasons are that this site is quite an unusual, very soft curve, and you actually don't see the centre facet until you're literally 90 degrees to the shop. If you're approaching it from either Notting Hill Gate, for example, coming out of the underground, or coming down Pembridge Road, you don't see the centre facet at all. You just see a blank facets of either side. So we're proposing to obviously put the Foxtons on 3. Now, if you look at it completely from the centre, you see all 3 Foxtons, but that's only one angle. From every other angle, you don't actually see the centre facet at all. My client's also willing to maybe another application, if this is a problem, we're happy to reduce the size of the Foxtons, because they appreciate they might be slightly big on the fascia. But their main idea is to try and get a site presence, but less illumination, by basically getting the lettering on the other 2 facets. Because if you see it, there's some photographs which are unfortunately not in the application, you actually don't see the Foxton sign at all.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Colleagues who would like to ask questions? Actually, I'll go first, if I may. Can I just ask the agent, perhaps I've misunderstood this, but the large 900 by 600 millimetre signs, have they got permission and are actually there at the moment? Because
Yes, they're basically, the current application is a replication of the existing approved application as far as the projecting signs.
Oh, I see. So they actually have, they are there and they've got permission.
Yes.
I
Okay.
understood from the report that
Yeah,
it was
no,
a
no.
retrospective application for those signs.
Sorry, Joanna, you can't butt it.
No, these were in the original approved application, I think 2008.
Oh, I see.
Of 9 by
Right.
6. Internal illumination, exactly the same. They're like for like, there's nothing changing.
Okay, all right.
I just put them in to the application because it was an overall advertising application.
Okay, all right. So the new element is that there will be Foxtons branding on all three of the fascia panels, whereas at the moment it's only on the central one. Is that correct?
Exactly, but the illumination will be more subtle, rather than the big pelmet light which was approved. The pelmet light which washed down, which you can see on the existing photograph, that washes the whole fascia. We realised obviously we couldn't replicate that on all three fascias. That would be too robust, so we decided to introduce a softer halo effect, which is a green halo. It's not a bright light, so it's softer, and obviously put it on three faces, so you can actually see the shot when you're approaching it. See the Foxton, that is.
Okay, thank you for that. Colleagues, who would like to speak? Councillor North.
Yes, thank you. To the objector, Councillor Gardner, I represent the ward opposite yours, and it is a corner of concern to both our wards. And I note that the objections come from the Ladbroke Association as well as yourself. It is certainly a large and big increase on what is there at the moment. The suggestion has been that it could be made smaller. Would that appease your objection?
I find it interesting that the applicant hasn't made any mention of the two projecting signs that are on the side panels at the moment. So actually, as you walk down Notting Hill Gate or you walk down Pembridge Road, you do see that it's Foxtons because of the projecting signs. I think a good compromise would be to drop the central panel and to actually put on the two side panels. I would say that I've lived literally just round the corner from it, and in the entire time, and I've been there before it was built, it's never had the green fascia and it's never got any lighting. So I find that somewhat disingenuous, and I did on the pack. But I would love if we could just A, dim it down, and B, just less of it, because otherwise that's 6 Foxtons branding. So perhaps if you lose the central one, you can still see the left and the right hand one, or you just leave it with the central one and the projecting signs, which is about the same as everybody else has.
There we go. Sorry, so I'm almost going to put that question exactly to you to give you an opportunity to answer that. Is there a way in which this could be toned down?
Thank you. I'm not quite sure where the 6 Foxtons signs come from, but I haven't seen that. Sorry. What's actually there? The approved green wash light, which is on the existing, has been there for a number of years. I'm not sure. There's photographs of it, and there it is. But that's not a CGI. This is a reality photograph. Okay, the projecting signs can be seen when you're walking along, but they're relatively small compared to a fascia band. And I'm very aware that when the site presence of the shop, when you're actually walking along it, you don't see anything but a blank fascia. And as I say, we're willing to maybe reduce them by at least 3/4 to sit smaller within the fascia. But the halo lettering the halo lighting will be also a lot subtler, be less bright. So the actual overall light levels would be less than what's existing.
Other questions? No. Okay, thank you very much indeed, both of you. So questions to officers. Who'd like to go first? Will.
Just very briefly, we've heard from the applicant that they're willing to reduce the size of the lettering. Is that something we can do via condition, or does that have to come back to committee?
I don't believe that's something that we could control by condition. It would need to be amended and then come back to committee.
In terms of this, I think Councillor will ask about the size, but I want to know what Councillor Gardner, on behalf of the residents, mentioned, removing one. Will that be, and keeping two, just as, will that be an option for us to add as a condition, or will it's not within the legal? I'm assuming your answer would be no, but I still want to ask you.
No, members need to consider the plans that are in front of them today, and any amendments would need to be subject to further consideration at a later date.
Okay, thank you. So in other words, trying to move things forward, the correct mechanism really here would be for us to refuse the application, but making it quite clear that the two side panels, if you like, that a smaller branding would be acceptable. I think, colleagues, it would be quite difficult for that to be refused, truthfully. But if something smaller, that's something that we could make it clear within a refusal, if we were minded to go in that direction, that was what we wanted. In terms of the projecting signs, if I've understood correctly, they exist and they have permission, so they may be rather large by comparison with the SPD about shop fronts, but that's truthfully a side issue now because they're there and they have permission.
I can just come back to you on that. I've just done a bit of a brief planning history check, and it looks like the 2008 permission was withdrawn, so we didn't actually make a decision on that, but there might be a case that because they've been in situ for an extended period of time, they may benefit from deemed consent and are not enforceable in that way. But without looking further into that, we wouldn't like to give members a concrete decision on that right now.
Sorry, I just want to point out, just to caution the council, that if we, the members, that if we're going to be making a determination, it needs to be based on policy and not on the SPD alone for it to stand. And while I appreciate there may be some amendments to the design that you would prefer, which is perfectly reasonable, those can't be a reason for refusal. It would have to be based on policy essentially, and then the applicant can choose to either appeal that or to resubmit or both. It just as a way of procedural caution, that's all.
No, that's helpful. So in other words, we would have to say that we were refusing on the basis that the proposed fascia signage, the lettering was too large and too prominent, and that the impact on amenity of the area, that was unacceptable. Although, having heard the discussion, obviously the agent will know that something more modest almost certainly would have to be considered acceptable by a future committee if we were to go down that route. Mr. Banks, that's a reasonable way of looking at it, yes?
Yes, essentially. If that reason for refusal can just be linked to the policy and the development plan, and yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions to officers? No, I think I've got a sense of where we're going on this. So the recommendation is to grant grant consent with the conditions set out in the report. Can I see those in favour of granting, please? Can I see those against? So that the recommendation is not adopted. So we need to resolve a reason for refusal of consent. So I think following the conversation I just had, I think we decide that the fascia panels, that the signage, the lettering is too large and too prominent in relation to the circumstances of the site, and that on that basis, the impact on amenity, which obviously is a development plan matter, on that basis it's unacceptable and consent is not approved. I would like to propose that, if officers are happy with that. Subject of.
Sorry, just sort of.
Yeah.
Sorry, just discussing. This is an application for advertisement consent. So we're looking at obviously visual amenity and highway issues. There's no highway issues whatsoever.
No.
It's all about visual amenity.
Yes.
And I think so. Would link it to, you said policy CL4. CR4. Yeah. Yeah. So.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So I would like to propose that. Is that seconded? Councillor North seconds. Can I see those in favour of that resolution, please? Those against? No. So that resolution is carried by 3 votes to nil, with Councillor Lane and Councillor Ali, I think, abstained. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you very much indeed. If we can now turn to the application in Beaufort Street, please. Jess, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Yes, before you is the application at 111 Beaufort Street. So this is a site location plan. So the application site comprises a semi-detached property with an existing rear wing, closet wing extension. Some aerial views of the application site from the front and rear, where you can clearly see the existing rear closet wing extension. Some site photographs from within the rear garden, and then an existing site plan. These are the existing elevations, the front and the rear, and the existing section and side elevation. So the proposal seeks permission for infill extensions at ground floor and first floor level, the creation of roof terraces and a mansard roof extension along with associated works. Oh, sorry, so the existing floor plans first would have been helpful. And the existing second floor plan and roof plan. So the proposed floor plans in front of you, so the lower ground at the left comprises single-storey infill extension to the side, and then an infill extension across the rear of the property to align with the existing closet wing projection to the rear of the property now, and then internal alterations. The ground floor plan comprises a small infill extension above the ground floor, lower ground floor single-storey extension, and the creation of a small terraced area adjacent to this. And then the first floor shows the kind of conservatory-style roof above that ground floor extension and some other internal alterations. And then the proposed floor plans for the mansard roof extension showing the 2 additional bedrooms and roof lights that would be created. And you can also see the external terrace created on top of the closet wing extension. So this is the proposed rear and front elevation, where you can see the creation of the mansard roof and then the alterations to the lower ground and ground floor level. And then some sections which are really helpful to understand the roof extension extent here. So that's the last slide. So the proposed extensions and alterations are considered to preserve the character and appearance of the conservation area. It's considered that the proposal would not result in a loss of amenity to neighbouring properties, both privacy or daylight or sunlight, and it's considered that the proposal would not result in a harmful impact to retain trees on site subject to conditions. The officer's recommendation is to grant subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
very much. Now we have an objector registered to speak.
Yes.
Hello. Thanks for bearing with us. And when you're ready, please, you've got up to 3 minutes.
I am the owner-occupier of 113A Beaufort Street, which is sometimes called basement flat of 113, sometimes it's called garden flat of 113, and that's because my particular property has a very strange interior structure. This is how it was built in Victorian times. This is how we bought it over 40 years ago, and we have kept it exactly as it is. So part of my property is to the side of 113, and part of my property is below 113. So I'm sometimes under the main house, and sometimes I'm at the side of it. My 2 bedrooms are both at the rear of the property. Now, this, as you know, is a very small plot of land. Our building is quite distinctive and noticeable because of its location. It's quite imposing. It's on the corner of Elm Park Road, and this is where my front garden is, and the corner of Beaufort Street. And then there is the intersection with Elm Park Road going left and the intersection with Elm Park Road going right. So it is a very distinctive site and very noticeable. And it is a small plot of land that 113 shares with 113A, with something called the studio, which was a wooden hut at the back of our property, which is now developed into a major place, and with 24 Elm Park Road, which is the big property behind me, and the applicant 111. There's 5 of us really coexisting in a very small, congested plot of land. Now, we have lived there happily, okay. We can hear each other's noises, we practically live together, but it was possible as long as none of these buildings embark on major extensions. And none of them had for over 30 years. Now, unfortunately, I'm the only remaining Chelsea resident left since Mrs. Barrow passed away and the new owners bought 111. It was just she and I left. Now it's just me. And so I have lived through how it was for the first 30 years after we bought it, which was quite a happy existence, even though a little cluttered. And over the last 10 years, how it became increasingly different, detrimental to my way of life and detrimental to my building, because my property, because as the original owners started to, I'm sure you know all this, started to sell off their properties because their children grew up and they moved back into the country, and the properties were immediately bought over by overseas buyers. The first thing, and that's all around me, hemming me from every corner, the first thing these new buyers did were to immediately embark on extensions, digging downwards, adding floors, moving sideways in every way possible.
I'm afraid...
As soon as that started,
I'm afraid your
problems started.
Time is more or less up.
So may I just say, my two main objections...
Just very quickly, very briefly.
So things have changed in my life, and the two main objections I have are the underground excavations, which started off with the first application, the original application, as creating a story below the existing basement. Underground excavations are so detrimental to my property. It's the basement flat, and as you know, the basement flat is the first one to suffer, and it has suffered from 24 Elm Park Road. Number two, may I just finish? Underground excavations. It's now been tweaked into lowering the ground, the basement. But it started with creating another floor. Underground excavations. detrimental physically to the structural integrity of my property. Number two, the side wall, which immediately overlooks my bedrooms, has, for a reason, in Victorian times, never had windows in it.
Okay, all right.
Only
I'm sorry,
low
I'm going to have to stop you
and
there.
now 2 windows. I'm just finishing.
You
please.
can't just talk
So the
as
windows
much
to
as
be
you like.
opened
I'm sorry,
and the
but
side
you
wall
can't.
and the excavations. These are my two
All right, very
objections.
good. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Both detrimental to my property and both will cause subsidence.
Thank you. Can I ask, is Mr. Hastings, who I think is the architect, so if you go ahead when you're ready, and I think you've actually, well, I think probably you've got up to the best part of 5 minutes, but whenever you're ready, please go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you for hearing the case this evening, committee members. I think what I'll probably focus on is the objections that were made, so I can give you the context of the design and the theorem behind it. I think there's a misunderstanding between 111 and 109, because 109 has consent for a basement application, which is an additional story under the existing lower ground. 111, there hasn't been a previous application seeking an additional story, so I'm not sure where that context has arisen from. We're merely looking to lower the lower ground by 370 mil. No additional story, no basement works. The footings that are present in this building allow you to do so by lowering the slab closer to the corbel. So there's no basement.
There's still underground excavations. May I say?
I'm sorry, you can't interrupt other speakers. Can you switch your microphone off, please? Yeah. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Mr. Hastings, carry on.
Right. So then light and view into bedrooms via roof lights, I believe, were the other key objection. So we've submitted a right to light survey following the registered objections online. So obviously we take these very seriously, and we do want to work with residents to make sure all is supportable and reasonable to those involved. The report clearly shows light-wise there's no adverse effect by this proposal at all. The proposal at lower ground extends only as far as the outer rigger. It doesn't go beyond the built line in any way. At ground floor, at the moment there's a side-facing window, which is in the outer rigger, I should clarify that, which is removed, and the infill extension is only 1.5 metres deep. So it's very small in the context and steps further back from the lower ground floor. At the upper outer rigger level, where a terrace is suggested, there's an existing terrace at the exact same level at number 113. 24 at Elm Tree Road also has one, and the majority of Elm Tree Road have terraces at various levels to the rear. So the context of terraces at these levels, in my opinion, is very well established in this area. We've done what we can where terraces are proposed, that the side flanking walls are solid, to mitigate any overlooking. It could also be that on the ground floor in particular, where the rear terrace is proposed, perhaps there could be trellising on the boundary edge, which would assist with further mitigating any concerns around privacy. In terms of any concerns of subsidence, water ingress, for a lowering of 37 centimetres in the lower ground floor, historically, the way these slabs were built, there wasn't a damp-proof course anyway. We can introduce that, and actually we're then creating a drier side, which would benefit 113A as opposed to adversely impact it. Obviously, the conditions proposed suggest detailed structural proposals as part of the conditioning of this consent. The application followed a pre-application. We further reduced kind of the mass, the volume, and also the level of glazing beyond what was actually a very positive pre-application. We wanted to reduce that to be more conservationally, more neighbourly. So it went through quite a vigorous design process, and I believe what we put forward is sensitive, whilst appropriate within the policy confines and the site-specific parameters. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry, you can't interrupt other people. Colleagues, any questions for Councillor Lane?
Thank you, Chairman. A question to the applicants, just in relation to the drawings that were included in the pack, specifically the drawings that talk about the existing front stairs to be recovered. with Portland stone or similar. I assume you've got that in front of you. I know condition 3 specifies that materials should match existing. So if the stairs are currently Portland stone, isn't it important that Portland stone replaces them, not a similar stone? Can I ask you to comment on that?
Absolutely. There's a mixture of materials. Portland is present 2 areas, and some of the some of the stairs that lead up to the front door and down to the side passage currently have been broken over time, and you'd call it a concrete finish now. But if you look at the kind of holistic area, it would be Portland. We very typically say Portland or similar because it allows for debate or officer preferences to lie into conditions. But if Portland is the preferred finish, we'd very much support that because it's correct for the area.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to ask a quick question, the objector. You've mentioned privacy issue in terms of the building. Can you explain a bit more how that will impact especially your bedroom you've mentioned? Can you make it short, please, if you don't mind? Thank you for your answer.
Can you use the microphone, please, so that everyone can hear you?
My bedroom, in which I lie a lot because I have bone problems lying in bed in my bedroom, overlooks directly the side wall of 111, which I believe is called the flank wall. In that original Victorian flank wall, there was a very low window, which was always obscured by net gilding. Now, that low window, the original window, no other windows existed in that wall, was so low down that it was obstructed by the ceiling of the studio. So anybody who stood in that window could not actually see me. However, any new windows now, above that new window, will literally look at me lying in bed. That's what I wanted to say. Will literally watch me as I undress. There is a reason why there are no windows in that wall, and that's the Victorian reason. It's not just tax, window tax. It's because of privacy. This will be a terrific invasion into my privacy. I cannot change my clothes. I cannot lie in bed, which I do a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for that response. Chair, may I have another question to the... Yes. Thank you. To the agent, Mr. Hastings. I would also like if you could respond to that privacy issue. That's one point. The second point is the structural issue. When the new dwellings takes place, what will be the damage neighboring properties? That's number one. The second point is in terms of we had issue of flooding lately, the last couple of years, in fact the last 10 years, twice. Can you give us a detailed information about the future flooding because of the basement-related issues? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Just to reiterate, there is no basement extension. We're only lowering the lower ground, so there's no additional story. But in answer to the questions, at the moment, there's a ground floor side-facing window towards 113, which is removed where the infill extension sits at ground floor. The only other side-facing window that's proposed is at first floor, which the officers have suggested conditioning to obscure glazing and non-openable to 1.7 above finished floor. They are the only 2 side apertures in the outer rigger as proposed. In relation to, the order you asked them, structure in terms of damage. So a condition that's applied is to do with the certified structural engineer, chartered engineer, putting forward the proposal of how the works would be undertaken. There's also there's a building regs application and the party wall agreement process, which means all detailing to do with all structure and all junctions at any shared wall. There's a legal act to protect both parties through that. So that would typically follow planning consent. But in terms of investigations we've done so far, there's been targeted investigations in the property to understand the existing structure. We understand the existing corbel level, which is the foundation between the 2 properties. And at this point, it appears clear to us that to lower at 37 centimetres, there's no alteration or underpinning needed. So further, again, just removing that imagery of a basement extension, there isn't underpinning suggested to any party structure. In relation to flooding, there was a full flood risk assessment and sustainable urban drainage report submitted as part of the application, which included kind of rear planters that help attenuate and slow the water flow into the sewer network. So that was considered at length. We've got rainwater slowing gullies at every terrace. We've got pedestal patios to the rear, which allows further water build-up and slower dissipation, all in compliance with the policies. And hopefully that detailed report came through to you. And yeah, I believe the officers were in support of that too.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
May I add?
Just a very, very quick question to the applicant, just following on from the window and in response to the objectors. I noticed that the condition actually says it needs to be fixed shut and obscure glazing from below 1.7 metres. And then I'll ask, that's confirmed, yes?
Yes, it was put forward to us and we're absolutely happy with that by all means.
And then I would ask the objector, would that go some way to appeasing your concerns that it's going to be fixed shut as well as obscure glass?
That obviously will make a difference. However, regarding the excavations, even how little they are, my house has suffered from initial subsidence because of similar excavations.
My colleague wasn't asking you about that, so
well,
that wasn't that wasn't the question. No,
that would help to make it obscure glass.
Yeah, good. Okay, we've
but the
established
balcony, however, will still look into my bed.
Yeah, no, Councillor North didn't ask you about the balcony. So I'm sorry, you need to
It's also
stop
privacy.
that.
It's the window and the balcony. The proposed balcony and the proposed windows.
Okay, all right, we've heard what you've had to say. Colleagues, any other questions you'd like to ask? No. Okay, well in that case, thank you both of you who've helped us and answered our questions. So if you can turn the microphones off now, that's great. So colleagues, no, I'm sorry, you can't. No, I'm sorry, you can't just kind of. We aren't here to have a general discussion for everyone's benefit. I'm sorry, it's a structured process because we are formally making decisions as a planning authority. So yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to say that you can't speak any further. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. Colleagues, questions to officers, please. Who would like to go first? Anybody? Sam.
I think this is a comprehensive report, a very clear application. It seems to meet all policies, and I'm happy to proceed directly to a vote. I don't have any further questions.
Any other points colleagues would like to make? No. Okay, that's good. So in that case, I think we can move to a vote. The recommendation is to grant with the conditions set out in the report, which include reference to the window, which has already been discussed. Can I see those in favour of the recommendation, please? So that is agreed. So permission is granted. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. If we can just take a short break, please. I think we can make a restart. So now, if we can move on to consider the application at 106 Lexham Gardens. Jess, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the application before members concerns Flat A at 106 Lexham Gardens. The application site relates to a mid-terrace property, and the application is in relation to Flat A, which is at the lower ground floor. This is some aerial views of the front of the property and the rear of the property, and some photographs of the rear elevation. You can see this fence to the right-hand side of the photograph in this side and here, which cuts the rear garden associated with the whole of the property in half, and half is associated with Flat A and half is associated with neighbouring flat. Some further photos of the rear existing outside WC and the front light well, and some photographs showing the front and rear and neighbour context. This is the existing site plan, and as you can see, that red line going through the centre of the plan shows the kind of slim, long floor plan of Flat A. So there's a section through on the right hand side and some elevations of the rear and front, and some existing elevations, and the existing lower ground floor plan and the roof plan. So the proposal is for a lower ground floor rear extension and all associated works. So the section's helpful to understand the extent of the extension on the right hand side of the screen here. So it's single story and extends into that rear lower ground floor part of the garden, and it will have a lean-to roof with front doors at the end. And so section 3 showing on this side now the extent of the single story extension and the roof lights within the roof area. And then the proposed lower ground floor plan showing the extent of the extension in plan form, and then the roof extension here where you can clearly see those roof light windows, all 4 of them. And that's the rest of the side. So officers considered the application, and it is recommended for approval on the grounds that it would not cause detrimental harm to the character and amenity of the area and would not have a harmful impact on neighbouring properties. Thank you, Chair.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed. Now, I think a neighbour has registered to speak.
Yeah.
Hello.
So forgive me because I've lost my train of thought, a little bit stressed after that, but I'll try and remember what I need to say.
Yes.
So basically, it's a pity you can't show the pictures from the view from my home, but basically I live on the ground floor and there's 2 flats in the basement. There's a very narrow flat, which is where the extension is proposed. Now, the view from my home will become, and it's aesthetics, it's not going to hurt anybody, but personally it's my home and it's my outlook, and I just feel as though I'm already feeling enclosed with the existing extension that was permitted 2-3 years ago, and this one will give a feeling of even a more feeling of enclosure, just over dominant what this extension is proposing to do. Now, I'm going to try and explain a little bit more, because actually when I read the report approving this, there's various errors in the actual report and inconsistencies, which I hope if I quickly explain. So, for example, when they're saying that the extension will be lesser in scale than the extensions of neighbouring homes, it's not true. It will actually go out further than the existing extension that exists there within 106 Lexham Gardens. And then the report actually contradicts itself. It's conflicting. It's saying it'll create a feeling of symmetry. No, it won't, because you'll have one extension which has fake grass, and then we're going to have this a narrow one and longer in depth with roof lights. So I will literally look out over, this will be my outlook for my home. And even though it's saying it's smaller, it's not. It's smaller than the existing extension. It's actually going to be almost 6 times the size of what's there at the moment. It's going to be higher. The height will be higher. It will be going out more into the garden, into the depth of the garden. So actually what will happen is now somebody can just step up and then step into my window, which is less than a metre from what this proposed roof will be, which I have already on this side, so I have to keep the shutter closed and the windows locked. I can only open a window if I'm physically staying in the room. Now this is my kitchen outlook that will overlook this extension that's been proposed. Sorry, I just wanted to mention, not only is it inconsistent, this report, he's actually got the wrong rear extension address. He's saying flat 2, it wasn't, it was flat B. He's talking about the building being over 6 stories. No, it's not. He's talking about the extension will be significantly smaller in scale than neighbouring extensions. Actually, it will be going up further than the extension that exists at 106 Lexham Gardens at the moment. It's not that I have anything against the individual or I don't want people to improve their homes. We completely worked with the other basement flat for their extension. It has impacted my home. So hence, duplicating an extension on the other side, a home where I work every day, I work from home, and it's my kitchen, I have my dining table there, and all I'll see is a roof jutting out with these skylights. Now, when people look out their window, they don't go out and look down. You look out your window, and all I'll see jutting out to take away a large part of their garden. It's just a roof. I mean, I don't know what else to say, to be honest. And some of the points I made in my objection have just been ignored in this letter, in the response. So, for example, I talked about 2 very key points that I need to make is basically what he proposed there is literally a tunnel. And in the interim, he's been coming back saying, I'll remove the skylights. He wants to just create a tunnel and maybe have a family of moles moving in. I don't know. But the quality of the people that will be living in that home, the living room already had restricted light, and now they'll have even less light in the living area.
Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed. And actually, you began speaking before I was able to say thank you for bearing with us while we've obviously gone through all of these other applications. The applicant hasn't registered to speak, so it's our turn to ask questions of you. I'd like to start. I understand it's a slightly unusual setup at the sort of lower ground floor level of the building, isn't it? Would it help, because if I understand, you're on the ground floor, so at the back of your place, you look out over the rear garden of 106. Yeah. And the proposal would mean that when you looked out, you'd be looking over this sort of extension, which it's quite narrow, but it does go back a long way. Yeah. This is my question. If we were able to say that these skylights were sort of obscure glazed in some way, or possibly there might be something about the materials that the roof was. Is that something that would help you?
I don't think so, because what this report says is the skylights, the light won't be detrimental or affect me. Now, light doesn't have to be coming through the skylights and pointed. Light is light. So if I'm in my kitchen, the lights will be coming out. There will be light pollution. Even if they were sealed, I still have to overlook this roof that's jutting out. And don't forget, on the right, looking out, there's a solid wall. So I'll literally have a ledge outside my kitchen window. It will be an enclosure. And the report places heavy reliance on it being symmetrical, but it's not. It won't be symmetrical. I already have an extension that has fake grass, and then over here I'll have this hideous looking thing jutting out with lights on the top and a wall at the side.
Actually, just briefly, I just wanted to clarify that because it's number next door, 104, that building is built out quite substantially into its original rear garden.
Yeah, and it's a high wall.
So as you look out of your ground floor,
I have a picture here, if that's any
it's
help.
actually a large flank wall to your right as you look out. Is that right?
So
I've
it's already
understood these plans correctly.
So it's already quite overbearing, and then to create a ledge effect.
I just wanted to make sure I'd understood those points correctly. Colleagues, who would like to ask?
Can I just clarify something? Because there's that extension, but within 106 itself, there's already an existing extension there.
Yes, okay. Right. No, thank you. Colleagues, Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Osma Yunus, for coming today. Just want to know a bit more about, you said you also work from home.
Yeah.
And obviously through COVID, we got to know working from home, sleeping, staying, and everything has been done in the same space. I would like to know the light, more about the light pollution, as well as enclosure that you feel.
Okay.
Can you explain a bit more on that, please?
So for example, during the daytime, obviously you don't get the light pollution, it's daytime, but I have my living room there and I have my kitchen there, and when you're working from home, you do move about, and I tend to work a lot at my kitchen table because the kitchen table is adjustable. Sometimes I can raise it, I can stand. So if I'm in the living area, which is literally next to it, I have to keep the shutter closed because I have a computer. There's people in the garden. There's been drugs raids where they've escaped through the houses. So actually, I can't be in that room with my computer and just kind of use my home as normal. I have to keep it secure. Now, what this proposal is doing is it's saying I need to do the same in my kitchen. I won't be able to leave my computer on the table. In summer days or in just normal days for fresh air, I won't be able to leave my window open. That won't happen. In the evenings, if I sit there, yes, I have the light on, but then I'll have other light coming up from these 4 skylights.
Are you suggesting there's also a privacy involved?
Sorry, didn't hear.
Privacy, an issue that you cannot use your own space?
I currently can't use my space because of the existing extension. This will duplicate the impact for me because I'm now going to have it on the other side of my living area. And the kitchen, which I use all day long, and I work from home.
Thank you, Chair. No further questions.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So if you turn your microphone off, actually. So colleagues, we can ask officers now. Anyone like to ask a question? No? Okay. All right. I just quickly ask about the conditions. So these roof lights that we've discussed there, we said that they must be flush with the roof and slim framed. Condition 5. I mean, presumably we could ask that they had to be fixed shut if we wished.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so condition 5 that you've just referenced is in relation to the type of roof light, and that would be a conservation roof light, and that relates more to design and appearance in relation to the conservation area. If you wanted to impose a separate condition to obscurely glazed and fix shut the roof lights, you are within, to do so, but that would need to form a separate condition.
Colleagues, any other questions? Will, and then Lloyd.
Just a very brief question about condition 4, just to, in terms of what the roof material will be, natural slates. We heard on one of the neighbouring properties there was a sort of plastic grass put on the roof and various equipment put on. Can I just clarify? I think it is the case, but under that condition, the applicant can't place anything on their roof. They can't put plastic grass on the roof. It has to be that slate and stay that slate. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the way that the conditions worded, it means that they would need to finish the roof in natural slates and so maintain it that way. So if they wanted to deviate from natural slates in the future, they'd have to submit a further planning application for that.
No, it was just to support the Chair's suggestion about the skylights being opaque glass and fixed would benefit the other neighbours from looking onto that, was my thought, as an added condition.
Any other thoughts or comments? No. Okay, well, in that case, I think we can probably put this to the vote. Recommendation is to grant. But I think it's worth adding that extra condition that we just discussed, and which Councillor North has also indicated that he would be minded to accept. So can I see those in favour of the recommendation with that additional condition, please? Okay, so that is agreed and granted. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. If you could just catch up later on, if you don't mind, because we need to move on to the next item. The additional condition was that the roof lights would be fixed shut and obscure glazed. Okay, so if we can now move on to the application 15 Earls Court Gardens. Jess, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So before you is an application for planning permission at 15 Earls Court Gardens. The application site relates to a mid-terrace property with a existing 3-storey rear outrigger extension. On screen is a site location plan and some photographs of the existing front and rear elevation. This is an existing block plan where you can see the kind of depth of the existing rear extension, and then the property at the adjacent number 16, which also has quite a deep extension to its rear, and it creates this infilled area. This is an existing lower ground and ground floor plan and the existing elevations. So the application before members this evening is for a single-storey lower ground floor rear infill extension and alterations to the lower ground and ground floor rear fenestration. So this is the proposed block plan where you can see the infill extension with 2 roof lights on this part. And this is helpful to understand the proposal in its full. So the lower ground floor will be extended and the rear elevation amended at this level to create a flush rear elevation with a set of bifolding doors, and that will be single-storey. And here you can see in plan form that kind of alteration to the lintel and the doors at that lower ground floor level to provide the full width extension at that level, and the infill extension is best seen here in the proposed southwest elevation, and that infills to the as I said, number 16 Earls Court Garden boundary wall, or kind of their rear extension wall. And that's all the slides I've got. So officers have considered the application and consider it to not cause undue harm to the character and amenity of the area, and have imposed a condition to restrict the use of the flat roof area created so that it can't be used as a roof terrace. So that's an imposed condition, and the officers consider this is sufficient to mitigate any any impacts to the residential amenity of neighbouring properties, and therefore the recommendation is to approve. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, we have speakers registered for this. I think Mark Law, are you present? Yes, okay. So please, you've got up to 3 minutes when you're ready. Thank you.
I just want to say I welcome this planning application from my new neighbours. Number 15 is in need of some love and attention, and I'm confident that it's going to get it. I have only one single objection. It is just about the difference between a sill and a threshold, the difference between a window and a door. All parties are agreed that the flat roof of the extension should not be used as a roof terrace. However, the latest drawings do not express that intention. Drawings 202P3 and 302P3 show a full height opening which leads invitingly over a threshold onto the flat roof, when it should show the sash window with the sill retained at its present height to function as a deterrent to accessing the roof. Anyone on the roof looks straight into my bedroom. I've discussed this with Mr. Heim, who has written to me to tell me he is happy to maintain the sill of the sash window at its current level. He said his architect would be providing amended drawings if this would enable me to withdraw my objection. However, the drawings have not been forthcoming, which is why my objection has had to stand. All I am asking for is the submission of correctly amended drawings. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Extremely concise. Thank you indeed. So over to the applicant and their advisors. Perhaps you could directly address the point that's just been raised.
Right, me again. Thank you for bearing with us, and thank you to Mr. Law for his patience and giving us an opportunity to revise our drawings on multiple occasions. We received a further request from Mr. Law just timely with the Christmas break of our office, and sadly we were not in position to redesign the proposal. We consulted with our clients present today and with Mr. Heim, who corresponded on multiple occasions with Mr. Law, and we believe that this is just a simple misunderstanding. We are not proposing the seal to be leveled with the roof line. What we do, however, propose is to slightly lower the seal to ensure more natural light to the area of the living room. However, if it is to be seen as not in line with the conservation area, the sash window can be reverted to the current level, which is 15 centimeters difference. We're talking about half of a foot in reality. And we are very happy to have this as a condition to our application and provided further details or when prior to commencement, but conditions if this is appropriate. I hope I addressed the concerns of Mr. Law.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Colleagues, do you mind if I just pursue this quickly? I mean, it sounds as though there's an agreement there. We will need to check with officers that we can find the correct mechanism to give this effect. But I think, colleagues, are there any other questions that you wish to put to either side? No. Okay, well, thank you very much indeed. So if you can turn your microphone off, that's good. So questions to officers. If I can just ask, I think the phrase that we sometimes use is, notwithstanding the submitted drawings, that there can be a variation so that the window, the opening that we've been discussing can remain as quite recognisably a window in line with what the applicant is actually happy to offer. Can we do that?
Yeah, so we can do a notwithstanding the approved plans. Details of the amended sash window shall be submitted to and approved in writing by the local authority.
So colleagues, everyone's clear what we're doing, and officers, everyone's happy that we're allowed to do this. That's within. Okay.
What the new details are to show, because you did mention it. So we're talking about a sash window, which is sort of same sort of level as it is.
Yeah, so we could strengthen the condition to say amended plans should be submitted to demonstrate that the sash window will not be any lower than it currently is.
Very good. Well, on that basis, with that amendment, a variation, the recommendation is to grant, with obviously all of the other conditions in the report. Can I see those in favour of the recommendation, please? So that's agreed. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you, Mr. Law, for bearing with us, and thank you for that very constructive comments. Thank you. Can we now move to the application Elm Park House, please?
Thank you, Chair. So the application for members is for planning permission at Elm Park House on Fulham Road. So the application site relates to a development of flats, and specifically the application is in relation to the ground floor area of the building, which is currently in use as community rooms and a meeting room with a bit of storage. It's currently constructed from a timber kind of walling system, which is starting to not perform as it once did. So the application is to improve that with new solid insulated walls and extend some metal fencing and paving to provide access to the kind of further south meeting room. The application is considered to be acceptable in terms of amenity and living conditions for existing residents, and the recommendation is to approve subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Now, there are no speakers for this. Any questions to officers about this? No? Okay. Well, in that case, I think we can simply move to the decision. Recommendation is to grant with the conditions attached. Can I see those in favour, please? So that is agreed. Thank you. If we can now move on to 7A Pembridge Villas.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, before you this evening is an application for planning permission at 7A Pembridge Villas. The application site concerns an existing building, and the proposal is to insert bifolding doors within the rear elevation and to implement a roof light above the existing hallway at roof level. Objections have been raised in relation to light pollution from the roof light, and this has been covered within the officer's report and considered to not result in undue light spillage, and as such the application is considered acceptable and officer's recommendation is to approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Any colleagues, any questions about this one? No? Okay. Well, in that case, the recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour of the recommendation, please? So that is agreed. Thank you. And finally, this evening, we turn to the application at All Saints School, which is before us because obviously this is RBKC property.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is an application for full planning permission, and as you have said, it's before members this evening as it is an RBKC own application. So the application concerns the renovation and upgrading of the existing bike shed / lockers on the school premises, and on your screen now is actually a picture of the implemented structure as this is retrospective. So it gives you a good idea of what it looks like there. So the officers consider that there wouldn't be any detriment to the character and amenity of the area or neighbouring properties, and therefore are recommending approval of this application. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions about that? No? All right. Well, in that case, the recommendation is before us. Can I see those in favour of the recommendation, please? So that is agreed. That concludes our meeting. Thank you very much indeed, everyone. Thank you.